Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. And afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and share their knowledge and experience with you. I hope you enjoy it. Perfect. Right on, Gigi. Thank you for being with me. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being with me. Gonna be pretty sweet talk. The program will be focused on three main questions. What do you do for a living? How did you get there? And how did you knew that this was the way to go? So tell us what you do for a living, please.
Okay, so I am a romance author. I retired from 30 years in corporate America. I used to be a chief administration officer for a $4 billion financial institution. And I was the youngest C-suite executive by, geez, in some cases, 2 decades. So I was the youngest and I was the female. Um, and it was a culmination of a 30-year career in corporate America. But I, at some point, was just like, I could do this for the next 15, 20 years, easily retire from it. But I didn't want to die with my music inside. I felt like there was a calling. I had kind of already done this, got to the top. I was thinking like dream a new dream, climb a new mountain. And so I made the transition 2 years ago to become a full-time romance author.
That's pretty interesting. Not to mention, because I'm in corporate right now. I've been in a financial team for about 14 years, maybe 15 years so far. I love it. I don't know how things are in the States. Right here, they're not very romantic, especially in finance. A lot of things there. Romance is not one of them. And I've been in finance, in accounting. So yeah, I think I can speak for both teams. Not a lot of romanticism over there.
No.
So were you like walking the street one day and you were like, let me do 20, 30 years in corporate and then move to romantic novels, or did something else happen?
No, okay, so I'm going to tell you there's kind of a blueprint. I don't know if this is how what is in your country, but in the States, and it's kind of an outdated blueprint. You like go to college and the dream is to work in corporate America, right? So you go to school, get good grades, get a high GPA, intern in the summer, and then when you're standing on the steps of your university, you go into corporate America because it's safety, security, you could work there forever. And so I kind of just followed the blueprint of life, married my high school sweetheart, did everything you're supposed to do. And at some point, kind of the wheels fell off and I got a divorce and that was challenging. So I used to write as my way of like a coping mechanism because you have to be professional. At the time, I was in a very male dominated industry. It's changed considerably over the most recent 10 years, I would say. But through that, there was some challenging times. And, in order to be able to climb the corporate ladder, you have to be non-emotional and you can't, women are supposed to be just like men. And if you have any kind of emotional response, you get all these little labels that some of them are bad and they start with the B word or, just kind of things. So um, it had always been an inkling in the back of my mind that maybe this isn't, I mean, I love the financial institution. I loved it for a lot of years. I loved my team. I had 19 managers that reported directly up to me. 2/3 of the bank were reporting up through my business channels. And so I enjoyed it for a long time until I didn't. It was right after COVID. The US government was putting out record breaking programs to help. And they're brand new programs. They're new for the SBA, for businesses. They're new to help supplement those that got laid off during COVID. So I was working like 80 hours a week for over almost 18 months.
That's insane.
It was a lot just to kind of keep up because, COVID and the whole world goes on lockdown. It
Yeah.
was just like what we knew the world to be shifted overnight. And so the, Fed dropped rates. And so we just had all these government programs we worked through each weekend trying to figure out, okay, what do we do with PPP and how does that work? And we talked to our counterparts. You're having conversations with major US banks to figure out how is everybody doing all this new legislation.
It was pretty rough time. Like for example, here in Southern Europe, we didn't felt it that much. Like for example, you remember those masks, right? That people used to wear all the time. I
Yep.
had one mask for the whole pandemic. I honestly
What?
don't remember ever putting it on my face. I was wearing it on my wrist. This wasn't an isolated case. Most of us were like that because,
Mhm.
and I just don't want this on my face. I don't like the concept. And a lot of things weren't very clear. So yeah, I basically had the whole pandemic with one mask. Everything was open. I don't remember. I think there were like a few bars in the beginning of the pandemic because it started in March. So let's say June and July, there were a couple of places that were not operational full capacity around the coastal line.
Oh.
So yeah, and that was like for a month and a half, probably less than two. So the pandemic was did hit a lot. Like offices were closed, but everybody was working from home. So yeah, and if your job cannot be, or can be a remote one, where you just go to work, that's all there is to it. So it didn't hit hard at all here. As a Christian, I forgive, but I don't know if I have forgiven them about this toilet paper craziness that they did 4 years ago. But I'm almost there. And you're right about emotions. I guarantee you, because not only it's happening, we were taught in college
Mhm.
how to provoke the other side, and even
Mhm.
sometimes when you have to, when you really have to, but not often, when you have to, how to provoke your teammates, and you have to be expect to be provoked as well. So yeah, emotions are really bad in this situation. I myself have used this tactic a lot because people make mistakes, and when I make a mistake, I don't want to look like the bad guy. So I'm basically provoking emotions in the next one, so that the focus can be on either on on my colleague or at the other side, and it works perfectly. Were you ever taught how to deal with those situations physically?
Oh, Denny, you're taking me back because we would have, I feel like bankers love to have meetings and we'll have meetings just to have meetings. And so we had a Monday morning meeting of all the
Yeah.
C-suite executives. So that would kick off your work week, right? And so when you get to be a chief, everybody has strong opinions, strong emotions, they talk over you. So it was a little bit blood in the water, I'd have to say. So yeah, you better be able to hold your own because you'll
Yeah.
have another C-suite executive. They'll run you over and they will run your
Okay.
department for you. So yeah, you have to have iron sides. And so the other smaller meetings, when you go next level down your organization, and as you continue, they're not necessarily as strong, opinionated people. Also, they tend to have your direct reports. And so those employees, defer to you. One of the probably the most important tactics I always devised is when I had my 19 managers, we would meet once a month. So everyone would dial in. You just kept on working, but you could hear what all the other departments and business units were working on. If you had a piece of that puzzle or that pie, you had to dive in and speak your part of it. However, I would speak last. I would have all my team members, they would hash it out between themselves. And so I would be sure that I would speak last. And so when the conversation, the solution, the plan forward was all devised, that's when I would step in.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the most collaborative approach when you want to develop the people underneath you, because a lot of times they don't get a seat at the table and their voice is ignored. And because I have a much different philosophy in my management compared to the management I was raised under, that has been like the biggest, probably one of the things I'm most proud of.
No, you're absolutely right, and it doesn't always work for obvious reasons, but I'm trying to speak less as well. But sometimes it just doesn't work. So normally I'm just being a donkey, and when I can't speak last, I'm saying what I have to say at a meeting. They're like, so this is from me, and you can go to the less interesting stuff. So I'm basically kicking everybody out to me, but sometimes you have to do it.
Well, we had a flow because if you have all those managers, you have those that are, again, strong personalities. And so they'll speak up immediately. You have those in the middle that they'll eventually speak out. And they have those that you literally have to call their name. And so people knew I don't like to necessarily call out people, but if it affects your department, I'm going to need you as a manager. So it's a little bit of coaching also. So when you bring them all together, they can hear how other ones that have more seniority are responding. They can hear that dialogue. So to me, it's like growth at all levels. But you're right. I mean, you can always throw the flag and say, hey, time out, guys. I think we're going down the wrong road. But yeah, someone told me one of my very first bosses, I was I was a manager at 21 years old. So yeah, I know. I
That's
was
impressive.
promoted. I was promoted early because I think I was just a workaholic and he recognized it. But my boss, I was 21, he was almost 70. And so he had all these gems,
Totally
all these
different
insights.
generation.
Totally. But he was a mentor. He had been in banking at that point for 50 years. So he had seen everything. But what he told me is he said, let me tell you something about management. He said, they know you carry the hammer, you never have to swing it. And so that's what he was saying. It's like, you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You are the final voice in the room. So,
That's a wise man. You can respect that kind of a guy. That's pretty solid advice.
oh, yeah, 50 years in banking and he was my mentor. I was so lucky.
Absolutely. That's quite impressive, especially for a mentor, especially for a young person to learn from that. I
Mhm.
love it when you said about the blueprint, and that's my third question. How did you knew that this was the way to go? Now you touched about it when you mentioned that you had an amazing career and now you're writing novels, but I'm asking this question because I'm sure you've noticed that too. But at first, I thought it was something wrong with Europe for us being like that. But it's not only Europe. Once I started the channel, people tend to go to colleges and universities because they have this stigma, this idea that once you're there, once you're out of there, your life will be way, way easier. And I don't think that's true. I went to college. I have a bachelor, a master. I was about to start a PhD, but I had to postpone it for personal reasons. Keep in mind the PhDs here, most of them are absurdly cheap. Education is very, very affordable. I
Oh,
went to private
dang.
college and I was able to pay it off while working as a bartender. And I was working as a bartender in a normal Irish pub. I wasn't, part of the Buckingham Palace or any of this. I'm just a normal bartender. So
Mhm.
education here is ridiculously affordable. In Denmark, when I graduated in Denmark. That one was even more affordable because it was free. So there you have it. But my issue is not about, and I know that some people from the United States don't have this luxury. Some people from there are spending money on universities.
Danny, I'll pause you right there. If my children go to in-state school, which is inside Texas,
Okay.
it'll still cost me 20,000 a year. If they
20,000 a year.
per year. So that's $80,000 for a 4-year bachelor's degree. If
But
they
is
go
this for the
out of state,
university or the campus and the food in there, the rent in there and everything?
it's all of it.
Ah,
When you're so every school requires you to live on campus when you're a freshman, most every school.
okay.
So that's easily. And then some schools make you do that for 2 years. If my children go out of state, it goes up. If they go out of state private or religious, you can spend 250,000 on a bachelor degree, not a master's, not an MBA. So I marvel how inexpensive, and to me, that's how it should be, right? Education should be available to everybody, costly or free. But
Yeah.
we don't have that. It is a humongous money making machine here in the States. So a doctorate could easily be almost $1 million by the time you go through all of it, depending on if you go private, public, in state, out of state, religious school, or non religious.
My PhD should have been covered in 1 year because I have all the materials. I wrote them because I shouldn't be. And first of all, I haven't even heard of anyone living in the campus. That's not what we do here. But once I renew my PhD, it will be about 500 euros, which is a little bit more than $500 for 1 year. So
That's so
no way I'm gonna
affordable.
pay more, and I'm not exactly happy about that amount either, but it's doable. But my issue is not with the money because I've lost money.
Mhm.
You've lost money. Every person that I've ever spoken to has lost money, friends, relationship. It's part of life, you know.
Mhm.
My issue is that young people are losing sometimes, not always, but a lot of times, are losing between 4, 6, sometimes even more years of their life chasing
Mhm.
something that it's not for them. Once they graduate, they're starting a job that's simply not for them. And I'm trying to explain this all the time. I am not insulting people. That's the last thing I want to do. When I say something is not for them, I don't mean they're stupid or limited. It's just because I've been in that situation. I have done work-related things that were not for me. I was a very, very miserable person. And people, when you do something, because you said amazingly well, you know, once you started this writing career of yours, you just feel different. You just feel that this is inside you and you went with it. But when you're doing something that it's not for you, you're miserable. Now, I I'm not okay with it, but I understand when people are young and single, they can be miserable because they're miserable on their own. Once you have a family, you're just bringing this in the home, and it's bad for everybody. And this is why basically I made this channel. This is why I'm interviewing tremendous people like you, because I want to pick your brain on this and perhaps how to fix it.
Yeah, pick away. But you're right, because what we do is we buy into the societal norms that this is what we're supposed to do. And so you follow that blueprint. And somewhere along the way, there's this little seedling of dissatisfaction or discontent or knowing that you're made for something better. You think like, okay, I am a woman of faith as well. So I always think like God didn't put me on earth to sit in this chair for 50 years doing the same thing. And so that's why I feel like at some point people have midlife crisis. There's always an inciting event that tends to wake them up. Mine was this divorce that shook the very foundation of like, I thought we'd be together forever and now we're not. I thought I'd be a banker forever and now I'm not. And so it's got me to realize there's no absolutes in life. But at the
Yeah.
same time, we can't keep ignoring or pushing down that inkling that keeps coming up, especially if you're miserable with what you do, because oh my gosh, that can be 40, 50 hours a week with your colleagues. You don't like them, they don't like you. It just spills out. You said it gets messy and spills out everywhere, your relationships, your health, your mental health. So I agree with you. Now it's hard though. So one of the tools that I did when this inkling came about is I kind of did an audit. I'm like, what do I even like anymore? Like, what do I like to do? What do I enjoy to do? What do I never want to do again? And then trying to figure out, because I was talking to someone, solopreneur last night, and she worked for Johnson and Johnson, and so that's a huge, global
Yeah.
brand. She worked for them for 13 years. She said everything was great. She loved it. She was, but I was made for more. She leaped without a net. She had no idea what she wanted to do, but she went ahead and quit her job, talked to her, she had kids and a husband, and they had long conversations about it. And so I was like, wow, that is so brave to
Yeah.
leave. Yeah. I personally don't recommend that. I think
I
that
don't either because I've done it.
yeah, but while you're in your current situation, and we love to romanticize that when I get married, when I graduate, when I have a baby, when, fill in the blank, we love to romanticize that, but let's be realistic. When you leap into whatever you're fantasizing about or romanticizing, how does that actually work? What are the logistics of it? How do you make money? What does your lifestyle look like? What's the impact on the wife and the children or your spouse and children? And then what if that doesn't work? What if you don't make money the first year? Is there passive income, alternative income, that kind of thing? So I did a lot of pre-planning before I finally did make, I didn't leave without a net, but I feel people need to audit because let's be honest, you said you have a family. So as we get into adulthood, your identity shifts into so many things. You're a worker, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a brother, you're a son, that kind of thing. And so sometimes you don't remember what you even like anymore, or what
Yeah.
would light you up, or what your purpose is. Could you be a rock star at 50? Well, sure, it may be a little harder, right? You may not get the traction. So is that a realistic dream? But if you figure out what your gifts and talents are, I think, and something that will light you up, that's how you make the transition. Stay in your stay in your current situation of corporate America, but also be working on a business plan, a marketing plan, your action plan on the side. And everyone talks about side hustles. That's why they exist.
True. And I wanted to ask you about the specific genre you chose, because romantic novels don't. First of all, you're clearly a tremendously intelligent woman. You had a lot of experience behind your back. You could have picked anything else. You could have been a public speaker. You could have been a consultant. You could have been, and I'm not even talking about corporate. You know what I mean? You could have been so many other things, but and I'm just really curious because I've never talked to someone, from that genre. I've interviewed authors before, and I love people that are doing it. I think it's tremendous. I love reading. But why did you pick this one specifically? Was it a gut feeling?
So during, like I had told you, some of those difficult times that I went through, I turned to writing to be my cathartic outlet. And so I had shared, I actually have 10 novels written that will probably never see the light of day because they were written during some pretty dark times that I struggled through. And so what I would do is, come home from the bank or come home from the situation that I was living in, and I would write my characters. I couldn't necessarily journal my feelings because, my significant other at the time would go and read that. And to me, that's a complete violation of trust. So what I do is infuse those feelings into a story. And so I started off actually writing horror. And I was like, that's really not my jam. Like I can't, talk about all the ways that people can their life ends. That's kind of a little bit too graphic for me. But they're on the level of like Stephen King gore, not
Yeah, no,
writing.
that's a bit
I'm
too
not
much.
comparing myself to Stephen King and my writing talent, but anyway. And so I had shared it with my sister and my mom, and they're like, "You have something here." And so, to be quite honest, I'm a hopeless romantic. I feel like everyone wants love, deserve love, and I feel like if there was more love in the world, maybe it wouldn't be so divisive. Maybe we figure out all the different ways that we separate humanity. We love to put labels on people, but then at the same time, we don't want to label people, and we don't want to be labeled, and we don't want to be isolated, and we don't want to be separated. And so, as we have like tyranny around the world, it's because we find all these different ways to isolate ourselves. And I'm like, if we just kind of got back to, humanity, we're all humans, we're all going to die. There's a commonality there. And then focus on everybody has dreams. Everybody wants to have a better life. Everybody wants to, a girl born in Afghanistan, she probably doesn't want to be, in some of those resources and some of the decisions that are forced upon them.
Keep in
So,
mind that those people, I had a guy, he used to work for the UN, he's from Afghanistan, on the channel. Keep in mind that those people, especially now, especially after the situation
Paul,
a couple of years,
yeah.
they're so isolated that people that are growing up have absolutely no idea about the rest of the world. I hate giving this example, but it's an accurate one. I guarantee you 100% that people in North Korea have
Mhm.
no idea about basic freedoms, and they never had. Those that are alive today never had. Even before that situation when the two Koreas were divided, Asia in general don't have excluding Israel, of course. Israel is a completely different animal. It has nothing to do with any other states in Asia. In general, they don't see democracy like you and I did. Like, for example, here, yeah, we are electing a government for 4 years, but they have, let's see, normally they have about 1 year to do a good job. If it's not happening, they're out. They work for me, not the other way around. I'm
Correct.
paying the taxes, so they are accountable to me. Should be a hospital down there. If there is a hospital in one year, I'll be happy, man. If it's not, we'll hire someone else. They will never have this mentality because you and I, we grew up that way. They never did. And this is something that has been there for generations, for thousands of years. So they will absolutely never see the world. And again, I'm not insult. The last thing I want is to insult other people, other cultures. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm just, sharing what I know from them. It's always been like there, and I don't think this will ever change. And in all fairness, I'm not even sure if you and I are good enough to tell other people that they should change just because I guarantee you, if you and I are sitting next to one another and look at them, we'd be viewing them as a bit weird and a bit odd, and they will look at us with exactly the same eyes. I normally, when I wish somebody well, I'm always ending the conversation with "God be with you." And there's a story from Denmark. Right, I was living there in a nice cottage, and right in front of me there was this family, man, woman, and two boys. The oldest son was about 17 something, and the younger was 20, 12, 13, something like that. The younger boy was sick, and I saw the older brother in the drugstore in the neighborhood. I said, "Is everything all right?" Say, "Yeah, my brother's sick." So, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, God be with him." I really wished him. I didn't know that "God be with you" in that part of the Scandinavian region is used when someone is dead or dying.
Mhm.
So, yeah, imagine just going to the drugstore, go buy some stuff for your little brother, and somebody says it like that, and he was not happy. So, yeah, different people are different, and maybe we should stay that way.
Well, it's tragic because where we're leveraging social media to bring me and you together and introduce ideas though and our viewpoint on the world, right? So that's accessible to many, many countries. So for the betterment of people, they can sit in, they can look up different interviews or podcasts to find the person that they relate to the most so they can grow their mental health emotionally, intellectually, etc. However, do you remember before social media, your circle of influence was only the people around you. And if
Yeah,
they didn't want to grow in development and have an emphasis on self-love, then you just didn't. You didn't know what you didn't know. And I feel that some of these countries that are very isolated and cut off from their because the government imposed is almost like growing up in the 70s and 80s.
yeah,
You only knew what was supplied to you, and that came through the television or it came through the newspaper. And so now we have a treasure trove of misinformation and everyone's slant and everyone's opinion. And here in the US, you could be right, you could be left, you could be blue or red politically. But on those countries are so isolated, you only know what is told to you.
yeah. It's
And that's the
we
tragedy of it
never
because
get
we
over
don't
it.
need to live that way.
No, we definitely don't, and this is why I personally I'm always trying to, when somebody's curious and asking about the EU, I'm always trying to give them a fair picture, good and bad. And I'm always, there is no place on earth that is perfect. But I love the EU because I love history. The church that I'm visiting every now and then, I don't go often, but every now and then, there was, as a temple, it was established about 18 centuries ago, but for the last 15 centuries, it was a Christian temple, and it was made as such by Roman Emperor Justinian the First, because the city that I live in has a tremendous amount of mineral water, and his daughter was sick, so he brought her here to Hill, and that's how we ended up with the name Sophia of the city. So yeah, it's pretty rich history. Now I have a fourth question, and I'm never telling my guests what it is, unless they've seen an episode, of course. I know you can speak for days on this, but just at the top of your mind, if you can give my audience one advice about a job, about social life, about whatever you believe it's important, if you can give them one advice, what will it be?
Audit your life. We all have a benchmark. Today is your benchmark. Here's where I'm at. How is my health? How is my happiness? How is my relationships, career, etc. Go down the list, audit your life, see what's working, see what's not. And it has to be honest. Okay. We all know, oh yeah, I shouldn't eat those cookies after every meal, or I shouldn't. Let's be not superficial. Let's dive deep. Is that marriage working for you? Yes or no? Do you want to stay in it? Yes or no? Is that job working for you? Yes or no? Because the tragic part is we will all die. It does not matter your race, religion, ethnicity, we all die. And so I would hate for people to die with their music inside. You have to figure out what that is. And as scary as it will be, I'm scared that what people will say. I'm scared of failing. I'm scared of abandonment. All those things could happen. But the greatest strategy is if you die and you didn't do any of that. I feel like, again, like I said, I'm a Christian like you. When I get to the pearly gates, I don't want to have like, here was the life you could have had. This is what was intended for you. So to me, audit your life and start implementing changes. Do a blueprint. How do I get from my current benchmark to where I want to go?
That is perfectly said. I personally am not worried about that at all because I have bank loans up until 5th of July 2051. So I'm not going anywhere. They will never let me go. Uh, the, the bank
so,
manager,
he's so cute, Danny.
and yeah, the bank manager is actually a friend of mine, a buddy of mine, and I've known him for since 2015. I think since the first time I got my loan. And we started talking, so we see one another every now and then. And I asked him once, like, "What are you gonna do if I die? Like before I pay it? Ah, don't worry about it. I'm just going to cremate you, and you're gonna be working as a sand clock on my desk until your job until your debt is finished." Like that's so dark. I can't even be mad at him for saying it. But so yeah,
That is
definitely not.
hilarious. But sometimes it's so dark, it's humorous. But I
Yeah,
do have to tell you, I have two very close people in my life, and I love them to pieces, but boy, do they drive me crazy. They
yeah.
talk about all the things they're going to do. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And year over year, nothing changes. It's just talk, 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 talk. We've talked tactically, we've talked big picture. I'm much a doer. Like if I say I'm going to do it, I do it. But these two just talk. And so I love them, but I'm like, stop talking, start doing.
Yeah, no, I have this personal policy of mine. I never tell people about my plans. Never, because I, not that I don't want to jinx it, but that has something to do with it as well. I would rather, if somebody's interested, I would rather share a story of something that occurred
Mm-hmm.
and maybe how I could have done it better, something like that, maybe, yeah, but never about future because you don't know the future. It's not in your hands, it's not in my hands. I firmly believe that it's in God's hands, so I don't really try to make plans or anything.
Well,
Eh,
it's liberating.
say it again?
It's liberating when you can go
Yeah.
with the flow. There's a certain serenity that has to happen when you surrender to God's will.
Oh yeah, definitely. And with that said, Gigi, it was amazing talking to you. Please don't forget to send me links, everything, books that you wrote. I can put them in the description below.
Okay,
And
thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful meeting you.
it was tremendous meeting you as well.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Gap, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.